Hello everyone, my name is Joseph Elfelt and I'm the developer of GISsurfer. This video shows you how to split your screen and display the contents of an ArcGIS server on the left with the map on your right. Click a layer in the table of contents and that data appears on the map. This is the feature that is the basis for the name GISsurfer. If you do not already have a reasonable understanding of the table of contents for an ArcGIS server, then I highly recommend that you watch the prior video in this series before watching this one. My screen is now showing the default map. To start surfing data that is hosted on an ArcGIS server, I'm going to click the Base Map button and then click Add GIS Overlays. Scroll down a little bit to the input window. Next, you need to enter the address for an ArcGIS server into this input box. The address you enter can either be for the top of the table of contents or for anywhere lower down in the table of contents. And I can help you find the server addresses that you need. In the prior video, I described a PDF file that I curate with over 3,000 addresses for ArcGIS servers at all levels of USA government, from federal to local. You are now looking at the top of that curated list of server addresses. I'm going to search this list on the word event because that will take us to a server I happen to know about. This address is for the top of the table of contents for one of those servers. So I'm going to copy that address, copy, and go back to my browser, paste that into the input box, paste, and scroll down and click Send Request to GISsurfer. My screen now has two parts. The map is on the right, and a sidebar opens on the left with information from the top of the table of contents for this server. There is a reminder in the sidebar to not use the back button with GISsurfer. Depending on what you're doing, if you use the back button, the entire web page where GISsurfer is running might close and display the prior web page you had running in that browser tab. Currently, the sidebar only displays data hosted on ArcGIS servers. GISsurfer can display data hosted on some other types of GIS servers, including WMS servers, but the sidebar does not play any role in that type of data. Looking now at the information that is displayed in the sidebar, one thing we see is a link to the corresponding page in the table of contents for this server. So I'm going to click that and open up the page. We're now at the top of the table of contents for that NOAA server. We see the folder heading and we see several folders that we can look at. If I go back to the browser tab with the map, I can scroll down in the sidebar and we see the same list of folders being displayed here. I'm going to click on the water folder to drill down another level in the table of contents. Now we see the page, the address on the ArcGIS server for the page in the table of contents that we're currently looking at. We could navigate back up to the top of the table of contents if we chose to. Have to go back to the water tab now. And if we scroll down, well, there's the heading for services. We only see one service on this page. So let's click that and drill down one more level. Now, each time that you click on the sidebar to look at a new part of the table of contents, what happens is that the GISsurfer code sends a message to the ArcGIS server, retrieves that page from the table of contents, and displays the relevant information in the sidebar. And then that information for the sidebar is cached. It's saved in short-term memory, and as long as you are continuing this session of GISsurfer, anytime that you want to redisplay a page from the table of contents, it immediately pops right up because that data is saved in the cache. Let's scroll down and look at the layers here, see what we see. If you watched the prior video, then you know that it's necessary to drill down in the table of contents until you get to a layers page, and that lists the different pieces of information that GISsurfer can display on the map. So each layer has a checkbox, it has a layer name, and a layer number. And it is the layer number that is critically important. The layer name is not important. So I'm going to click the first checkbox to display that data on the map. There it is. Now, depending on how the data is styled and what base map you have displayed, the data might be hard to see on the map. That's not the case here. But when data is hard to see on the map, you always have the option of clicking the base map button, going down and turning the all white base map on, and that might help you see data that otherwise is hard to see. Well, we'll go back to the USA base map, and as soon as you have data appearing on the map, you can click Menu, Link to this map, and get a link that will replicate the map on your screen, going over to a new browser tab, pasting that link right in there, and we get the map appearing on the screen with the same data. So I'm going to close that browser tab to stay tidied up. Close that one as well. Okay, let's close that message here. Go back to the sidebar and show you something. Now, each circle on the map is a stream gauge, and notice they're in different colors. Well, you can go over to the sidebar and click on the legend button and know what the different colors mean. Purple, major flooding; red, moderate. Okay, that's useful. Nice to know that. So you can always find the legend from the sidebar. Oh, another thing you might want to look at, you might want to look at the actual page from the table of contents in the ArcGIS server by clicking up here to see if there's any useful metadata that you might want to know. Well, okay, so service description, we have a link to metadata right there. So if I click that, then I get, well, I get what I get. All right, might be useful. Now, when you are surfing data with the sidebar, there are two concepts to keep in mind. The first concept is that the sidebar shows whether or not the map knows about a layer. The map can only display layers that are checked in the sidebar. Those are the layers the map knows about. The map doesn't know about any of these layers that are not checked. It just knows about this one layer here. If I click the base map button to look at the list of overlays that the map knows about, I see the 5 overlays that are built in, and I see the stream gauge overlay as well, which is checked in the sidebar. If I go to the sidebar and I uncheck the stream gauge layer, the data disappears from the map. If I look at the list of overlays the map knows about, the stream gauge layer is nowhere to be found. In other words, the map simply no longer knows about the stream gauge layer. Of course, I can go over to the sidebar and turn that layer back on. Now, if I look at the list of overlays, sure enough, the stream gauge layer is back with us again. I'm going to close the sidebar like that. The second concept to keep in mind is whether or not an overlay that the map knows about is currently displayed is controlled in the overlay list right here. It is only overlays that have a number in front of them that are currently being displayed. I can turn the stream gauge layer off by clicking it. The map still knows about that layer. I can click the base map button and turn that layer back on by clicking it again. Now I'm going to turn on the weather radar layer as well. Move my mouse off to the side, and I'm going to find some place where there's some weather radar we can look at. I guess we'll go right there. Zoom in a little bit. Now the map doesn't really look all that great because the radar data is on top of the stream gauges. So let's fix that by going to our overlay list, turning the stream gauge layer off, turning it back on. That pops the stream gauge layer back up to the top of the list because it has a higher layer number than weather radar. Close the drop downs. Now we can see the stream gauge layer better. And since the stream gauge layer is now on top, I can click a stream gauge and get the attribute information, scroll down, look for a link I can click that leads to more information. and there's a not very interesting stream gauge right there. Now maybe you have turned a bunch of GIS overlay layers on and you want to turn them all off. You can click the base map button and say turn off all GIS overlays, and they're gone. You can always turn them back on. The map still knows about the stream gauge layer, so I'm going to turn that back on. Here's another thing you can do. Let's say you're working away and you decide you want to redisplay the most recent sidebar that you had. Okay, click the base map button, click Add GIS Overlays, scroll down past the input box and click Prior GIS Sidebar. There it is. This is a sidebar that let us turn on the stream gauge layer. Sure enough, it's still checked because the map knows about that layer. I don't really need the sidebar open, so we'll close that. I'm going to open up the sidebar again, Add GIS Overlays, and I already have a link that I'm ready to paste into the input box right there. Now notice that the first part of the link that I have highlighted, that's the address for the top of the table of contents for this ArcGIS server. What I'm showing you is that you can enter into the input box any page from the table of contents of an ArcGIS server. So let's open up the sidebar. Now scrolling down here to the layers, notice on the left that the layers are indented a certain way here. Well, what's up with that? Let's go and look at the actual page from the table of contents by clicking there. This page has incredible metadata explaining about the information you can see. Noah does the best job of anybody. Okay, scrolling down to the layers, we see the same kind of indentation going on here that we see back on the table of contents page. So let's take a look at what that means. If I click right there, let's call this a parent layer, and let's call these indented layers child layers. If I click on the parent layer, whoa, all of the child layers appear, and look at all of the different kinds of symbols that appear on the map. Well, we know that we can learn what these symbols are about by going up and clicking the legend button right there, and it will show us that for layer number 1, the map is going to show a red star. Layer number 2, we get the blue triangle, so on and so forth. Okay, let's go back to the map here. Now, if I don't turn on the parent layer, I have the choice of just turning on an individual layer, and there we see our red stars. If I do turn the parent layer on, I can go over to the map and I can click any symbol on this map and get the attribute information for it. So I'll get a little pop-up here, and it tells me that there are 5 layers that are currently on, but I'm only going to see attribute data for the layer that I clicked, and there it is. See if there's, oh, there is a URL here. Well, just for fun, let's click that and see what that says. Talks about a buoy. Buoy recovered for winter. That sounds like the buoy's maybe not there right now. Oh, okay. Let's go back to the map. And we'll close that guy. Let's look at the overlay list the map knows about by clicking the base map button. And notice that what I'm calling the stream gauge layer is still turned on. We did that in a prior sidebar. And overlay number 2 is really a collection of the child layers that are currently displayed in the sidebar. And that's why we can click on any of the child symbology on the map and get the attribute data, because that layer with the higher layer number is on top of the stream gauge layer. Now if I go over to the sidebar and I turn the parent layer off and I turn weather observations on and I go to the base map button and I look at the list of overlays, I still see the stream gauge layer, and now I just see the weather observation child layer. Okay, I'm going to close the sidebar. If you watched the prior video, then you learned that some ArcGIS data has a fused cache. I'm going to use the sidebar to display some data like that. And first I'm going to zoom out and then go down to Miami. and zoom in a bunch on Miami. All right, we'll go there. The screen now shows again the list of ArcGIS server addresses that I curate. I'm searching on Miami, and I'm going to open up the second link here, that one right there, and then click on Map Cache to drill down, and click on Base Map button here. And on this page, if we scroll down, we'll see that it says Single Fuse Map Cache True right there. So what that means is that all of the layers that you see listed here will display as though they were all welded together or fused into a single layer. So I'm going to copy that address, copy, go back to my browser and do the base map, add GIS overlays, go to the input box and paste that address from the table of contents in there, send request to the server. Okay, the sidebar opens up, scroll down, layers. Well, we see this message here alerting us that this is a fuse cache. Clicking any layer, going to turn them all on. So just for fun, let's click on a random layer here and see what we get. Takes a few seconds. Okay, the map changed, but it turns out we need to zoom in one more layer on the map in order to really start seeing data. Now we see what we wanted to look at. All of these layers are being displayed. I can zoom in some more. When I move the map, it has to refresh. What we're looking at is a base map for the Miami area that has all of these layers of information being displayed. Don't know if I see any more detail if I zoom in some more. No, I guess we're seeing all the detail that we're going to see. If I turn off, if I click anything over in the sidebar, all those layers go away because they were welded basically into a single layer because it is a fuse cache. Let's turn the data back on and see what this looks like if we open up the overlay list. Okay, we've got the stream gauge layer, we've got the weather station observations, and we just get a name called base map here. In fact, most of the fuse cache data that I have seen is intended, I believe, to be displayed as a base map instead of an overlay. And I'll show you in a different video later in this series how to make that change. Now, of course, the fuse cache base map is on top of the other two overlays that the map knows about. So if I wanted to look at the weather observations, I would have to make that the top layer. So that's now layer 3. Close my drop down, close the sidebar, zoom out so I can see. Here's a GIS overlay. There's an overlay right there we can click on at the airport and see what the weather observations are at the Miami Airport. Okay, close that. There's another thing to show you about overlays, so clicking the base map button, and now I'm going to click Manage GIS Overlays. We have not looked at that yet in the video, so let's go there and see what we get. So there are 3 choices here. Let's click Display Sidebar, see what that does for us. See the overlays that are built into GISsurfer, and we see the 3 overlays that we added via the sidebar. If I go back up here and I click on the weather radar, the sidebar will open up, and scrolling down here we're going to see that we have one of the overlays is checked and it's in red. Well, okay, let's see what happens if we click that to turn it off. Well, we get a message here saying that overlays that are shown with a red background cannot be turned off. So that's what the red means. That overlay is built into GISsurfer, or if you had a GISsurfer map link that turned overlays on with the data parameter, which we'll talk about in the next video, you cannot turn those off in the sidebar. Let's go back to Manage GIS Overlays again. See what happens if we click on, oh wait, I'm going to go show you something else about Display Sidebar. If I go back down to the list of overlays I added with the sidebar, now the last overlay we had displayed was the base map, but what if I want to look at a sidebar that I displayed earlier in this GISsurfer session? Well, here's the list of them. I'm going to click on the stream gauge one. That overlay list pops right up in the sidebar. I can turn the stream gauge layer off now if I want to. I can close the sidebar. I can look at the list of overlays that the map knows about, and the stream gauge layer has been removed from the map. The map no longer knows about that layer. Now we'll go back to the base map button, manage GIS overlays, and delete overlays. We'll see what we can do here. So I have to scroll down a little bit. These are the two overlays that we could delete on this screen. So if you had 4 or 5 overlays turned on, you only wanted to delete 3 of them, well, you could come here and just check the ones that you want to delete and then delete those from the map. If we look at the list of overlays the map knows about now, it only knows about the fuse cache overlay because we deleted the other overlays from the map and it no longer knows about them. All of the sidebar examples so far in this video have been for ArcGIS map server data. You can also use the sidebar to surf and display ArcGIS feature server and image server data. Everything I have shown in this video works the same way for these other data types with only a couple of exceptions. So let's look at those differences. The screen is showing part of the list of ArcGIS server addresses that I curate. These addresses are in the Washington State part of the list. If you watched the prior video, you know that addresses that have the word services here and some gibberish that looks like that, those addresses only have feature server data. I'm going to copy this first address here and use that to open the sidebar. The map shows part of the Puget Sound area, and I'm going to open the sidebar by clicking the base map button and add GIS overlays and scroll down and paste in the address that I copied and send request to GISsurfer. The sidebar opens up at the top of the table of contents and displays a bunch of services. I'm going to scroll down in the list and find the data that I'm going to turn on. Okay, I'm going to drill down on this feature server data right there by giving that a click. We now see a list of one or more layers, just like we saw with map server data, but the thing that is different about feature server is that there's no legend link that goes along with the layers that can be displayed from this link here. Feature server data does not have a legend page in the table of contents on the ArcGIS server. Everything else about feature server data works the same way. We can click in the table of contents. The data appears on the map. We can click on the data on the map. We can see the attributes for whatever we clicked on. Close that. If we look at the list of overlays that the map knows about, there's the feature server data that we added to the map. We can toggle that. The data goes away. We can click on the base map button. We can toggle that data back on again. Next, I'm going to show you something that is different about image server data. The screen is now showing another part of the ArcGIS server list that I curate. The city of Dallas owns that server right there, and I'm going to use that to open the table of contents on the map. So back on the map, I'm going to click the sidebar, add GIS overlays just like we've been doing, down in the input box, paste that in, and go to the server. And there's the sidebar. We see that we're at the top of the table of contents. We can scroll down a little bit. There's a bunch of folders here. I'm going to open up the base map folder, and we now see some image server. We see map server and feature server. Now notice that the image server data has a checkbox on the services page. We know, of course, that map server and feature server cannot be displayed when you're looking at a list of services. Instead, to display Map Server and Feature Server, we need to drill down one more step to the Layers page. But Image Server data does not have layers. Image Server data can be displayed when you're looking at the list of services. So let's turn on an aerial photo by clicking right there. The aerial photo pops up on the map. Now I could go here to Dallas area roads. I could click there to drill down to the Layers page, and we see a notice that these three layers are welded together. They're in a fuse cache. If I click any layer at all, they all turn on. The street names pop up on the map. I could go over and look at the list of overlays the map knows about. It knows about the aerial I turned on. It knows about the roads I turned on. The roads have a higher number than the aerial, indicating they're on top, and that's certainly what we see when we look at the map. I could close the sidebar, go over to the menu button, do link to this map, click right there, copy that, open up a new browser tab, paste in the link I copied, and bam, we get the same map that we were looking at in the other browser tab. The aerial takes a few seconds to load in, but it will appear and it will be underneath the street layer. There it is. If I look at the list of overlays that this map knows about, I see exactly what I expected to see. It knows about the aerial, it knows about the road layer, and those are the only two overlays that are turned on. This is the end of the video showing you how to surf data that is hosted on an ArcGIS server via the sidebar. In addition to this video, there's a PDF file on the same topic that has additional details and examples. You can find that PDF file as well as others by going to the GISsurfer homepage, GISsurfer.com, click the menu button, and then go to the help page. Next in this series is video 7, which will demonstrate how to use the data parameter in a GISsurfer map link to add both overlays and base maps to the map. You can always find my contact information and links to my various projects by visiting the Mapping Support project page, mappingsupport.com. Thanks for watching. I hope you find GISsurfer to be useful.